This is the 11.2 notes for pre-algebra. It's called writing equations of horizontal and vertical lines. So we're kind of continuing from Friday, where we first learned what the equations of horizontal and vertical lines look like. For horizontal lines, remember all the equations are always y equals a number. And for vertical lines, the equations are always x equals a number. So today we're going to kind of continue that a little bit with how to do that in any kind of scenario where we're just given a couple of points. So the first thing is we're going to practice the slope formula for some of these examples. Just to remind you what the slope formula is. It is probably still up on the board, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We use that a lot. We did it a lot in the last unit 10, and we'll continue to use it if needed here. You're going to see, though, today that although it can be used on every single problem, you may not need to use it. And so we'll see why. Okay, so here's what it looks like to use the slope formula. Remember, you can label your points x1, y1, x2, y2, like that, and then just plug them into the formula. So 1 minus 3 divided by -2 minus a -2, like that. And 1 minus 3 is a -2. But the denominator here, when you take a -2 and then you subtract a -2, or these both turn into pluses, it's actually just 0. And so that would be undefined. We talked about that briefly on Friday. Anytime you have a 0 in the bottom of the fraction, not the top, but the bottom, it is undefined. Okay, so that's an example of what the slope might look like today. Then we have another one. Let's see what this one looks like. Again, label it if it helps you, x1, y1, x2, y2, and then subtract your y's. That's just 2 minus 2, and subtract your x's. This time, though, 2 minus 2 is 0. That's on top, that's 0, and then it ends up being a 2 on the bottom. But it doesn't really matter what you get for the bottom this time. The answer is just 0. Just like the answer on this one was undefined, it's not 0. It's not like you don't just leave your answer as 2 over 0. You write the word undefined on this one. This one, though, the answer is actually 0. And then the last one is just another one where we practiced before. We're going to go ahead and skip this one. But the idea is still the same. You can use the slope formula. You're just going to end up with like an actual number that's not just 0 or undefined. But today, as we get started here, you're going to see that on all of these examples, you're going to see either undefined or 0 as the slope. And so we have to figure out like which one's which. So just like we talked about, I gave you guys a little mnemonic device on Friday. You can use that if you want to help you kind of remember the two things. So I'll write it down here. Fox, Hoy, in case it's helpful. V stands for vertical. U is that undefined slope, like we just saw. So like on this first example here, since we got an undefined slope, that means this would be a vertical line with x equals a number as the equation. And we'd have to figure out, well, which number is that equation at? But again, if that helps you, use that mnemonic device. Otherwise, don't. This one was horizontal. H stands for horizontal. This refers to 0 for the slope, not undefined. And then this would be y equals a number. So like on this one, when I saw letter B had 0 for the answer here for the slope, I know that this would be a horizontal line connecting these 2 points. And we could write the equation of it as just y equals a number. Okay, so I'm going to show you what you guys can do anytime you see any 2 points in an equation, like or as given points, and you're asked to write the equation of the line. Sometimes it's easiest if you can identify if one of the variables repeats itself. So one of the numbers is the same on both of the coordinates, then it's easier to write the equation. But I'm going to kind of show you the long way first. And then if you want to just kind of avoid the long way on every single problem after this and just kind of look for shortcuts, we can do that. So here's the longer way. It says step 1, find the slope using the slope formula. It again writes out the slope formula for you here. So let's start with x1, y1, x2, y2. And so slope formula would be 3 minus 3 divided by -5 minus 6. Now the 3 minus 3 gives me 0 on the top. and -5 minus 6 gives me a -11, but that's really just 0. Doesn't matter what's on the bottom there. Even if it had been a different number, it still would have been 0. Even what if you instead like subtracted in the other order, like 3 minus 3 and then 6 minus a -5, then this would just end up being 11 instead of -11. Still, the answer would be 0. So if you get 0 for an answer for your actual slope, that's one way to help you determine, what kind of a line is it. This is like that Hoy thing if you want to use that. But anytime you have 0 for an actual equation or slope, think of y equals mx plus b for a second. And if the m is 0, like we just found out, we'll go ahead and just multiply 0 like as your m, and then that means whatever the y-intercept is, that's going to be your b. Well, since all of the points here are going to be on the exact same y value, they're going to have the exact same y value, that y value is going to come right from this equation, like these 3's here. So we can do one of two things here. We could just use this little mnemonic device and say, okay, it's going to be y equals a number for the equation. If you don't remember this though, you can then look at your coordinates and either pick one of the coordinates and you could like substitute in and solve. Now this is a lot more work. I'm just going to show you guys this one time, but you don't have to do this yourself. So if we use the point 6, 3, and we know m is 0, it's like saying that would be 3 equals 0 times 6 plus b, but 0 times anything is going to still be 0, and that b would be 3. Okay, so because 0 plus b is just b. That tells me the y-intercept b is 3, but when I write my final answer for this equation, it would just be y equals 3. Where there's no x in it, it's just y equals a number, right? That's what this Hoy thing was telling us. So now we would graph this. And so whenever you graph a line that's horizontal or that has a y equals a number, you can even start by plotting these points specifically. So like you come over to 6 and go to +3 and put a dot. We go to -5 and 3 and put a dot. You can either just connect those two, or you can put a bunch of dots right on 3 and then connect them. But that's the idea. This is what the graph looks like. So that's for number 1, but the easiest way, I'm going to show you a quicker way we can do this, because it is a lot of work what we just did here, where we had to first find the slope using a formula. Then we tried to plug the point and the slope in to find b. We did all of this before when we had 2 points given to us. You guys had that even on the last test, which was last week. But it would be great to not have to do that every time. So instead, we're going to just use a shortcut. So what you're going to do is you're going to look for you're going to look at the coordinates, and you're going to see which one of the coordinates has a repeated number, right? In this case, and I'm going to circle it too. The 3's repeat themselves. And so you're going to say, okay, that's going to be kind of like your answer, but you have to figure out, is that in the X position or Y position for the coordinate? So if it helps you, label the X or the Y. Remember, it always goes X, comma, Y. So in this case, this would mean that the X value is always 3. So the easiest way to do this without really any work, you don't have to do the slope formula. You don't have to do anything else to find B. It would just be X equals 3. That's it. Or you can remember the little Vox-Hoy thing if you want to, where you would say, I'd have to find the slope between these points then, and you would find out that the slope was going to be undefined. So if you wanted to do it that way, you would find out that the slope is undefined, and then you know that you have a vertical line, but its equation is just x equals 3, because look at the x values, they're always 3. And then let's go ahead and graph this line. You can either just plot the points, which in this case, 3, -13 doesn't quite fit. It'd be way down here somewhere, which I don't have on my graph, but 3, 8 will fit. And I could pretty much plot any other points or just draw a vertical line going through that point. So it would just go up and down at 3. So look carefully at the axes. It can kind of help if you want to look for the x-axis, since that's the one where this point is. You can even like plot that point specifically that's got to cross the axis. Whenever it says like x equals a number, it's crossing the x-axis. That's the idea. I know that's confusing sometimes because people see vertical lines and think, shouldn't that be y? but the equation is always going to be x equals a number. Okay, and then let's try the last one out on this page before we go to the next one. I'm going to again circle the number that repeats itself in the coordinate, and this time the coordinates that are repeating themselves are the y's. Both of them have -4 for y. That means y is always going to be -4. So you write your equation as just y equals -4. That's it. These can be so simple, so easy, as long as you're just kind of looking for that repeated pattern. And then you have to figure out how to graph this. Again, this one, these points are too big. They don't fit on this graph. So we just have to find -4 on the y-axis, right? That's here. And it's going to be a horizontal line because it's going to pass or cross through the y-axis. So look for the y-axis whenever you start by plotting this number, -4. Don't plot it on the x-axis. I don't want to point here. That's the x-axis. I want it on this y-axis, but I'm not drawing it vertically like this. I want that point to pass it, right? So if it helps you, here's it in another color, just to see that this point starts at -4 and it goes everywhere on that same line at -4. Okay, let's go to the back page and try a few more of these just to get better at these. There's 4 more examples, but you can see how quick some of these go because you're just looking for a repeated number. But unfortunately, we get to number 3 and none of the numbers repeat themselves. So this is an old problem kind of thrown in here. Let's try to practice it because you'll need to know it eventually before the final exam anyways. But we'd start with the slope formula. 8 minus 4 divided by 5 minus 3. And that's going to be 4 over 2, which is 2. So slope is not 0. Slope is not undefined. It's not going to be a vertical or horizontal line. I need to write the equation of this line. Think y equals 2x plus b. Because 2 is the slope, I need to find my b. So you use any of the points. I'll just use the first one, x and y. And that would be 4 equals 2 times 3 plus b. And then this would end up being a 6. And then subtract the 6 so that we get -2. All right, so our final answer would be y equals 2x minus 2. So again, this was just a review problem kind of thrown in there just to make sure you know how to do this. Only time where it's just x equals or y equals without the other variable is when the slope is 0 or undefined, and that would only happen if one of the numbers repeat themselves for the x's or the y's. Okay, so let's figure out how to graph this. We did this again, it was on the last test. You start at the y-intercept, which is -2. Always start on the y-axis, that's the vertical one. And then if the slope is 2, think of it as a fraction. You can go up 2 and write 1. Keep doing that to just get a couple of points here and then draw out your line. Or you could have gone down 2 and left 1 also. That would have been okay. All right, so that's how we did number 3. Again, it was a review. It was not one of the new ones that we just saw. Let's see what happens on this next one again, though, number 4. This time when I look at it, the 4's repeat themselves. Those are my y values. So it's as simple as just being y equals 4. Again, so much easier, so much faster. You don't have to use the slope formula unless you want to, where you can actually subtract the 4's and then divide by the 10 minus 0. It's just you would see that the slope is 0, which means I have to write my equation like this. Y equals that same 4. Okay, so come over to the y-axis again. Whatever letter this says here, y, that's the axis you're starting with, and you find the number. So here's 4. And then instead of just drawing however you feel like it, make it so that you're going to cross this point only once. So that would mean going across it horizontally like this. So in case you can't remember which one's horizontal, which one's vertical, y equals 4, you're going to start at y and find that 4. It helps to kind of put a dot, maybe even in a different color, and then you're just drawing that line out so it only hits that one point. You're not going to draw it vertically here because then it wouldn't only hit that 4, it would hit all these other y values, which that's not the case. It's only 4. And again, if you wanted to plot these points, you could have. There's 0, 4, and 10, 4 would have been way at the corner here. Okay. If you have questions on these, I'll be back tomorrow to hopefully answer them. But here are 2 more examples on the bottom, and then we'll be all set. So we have this time the 3's repeat themselves. Those are the x's. And so it's just x equals 3. That's it. So simple. And then you can plot some points. So at 3 on the x-axis, here is the x-axis. It has to pass that point 1 time, or you can plot these points. 3, 6 would be up here. 3, -5 would be down here. And then draw out that line. So vertical line at 3. All right, and finally, the last one, you look at those points again, and unfortunately, none of them are the same again. So we can't just do, it's not just an x equals or a y equals. Here's one more practice of slope formula. So this would be 3 minus 5 over 8 minus 4. And so this one ends up being -2 over 4, which is a -1/2. If you need a calculator to help you reduce that, you can use a calculator. And that's my slope, and I need to find my b. So again, I would use y equals -1/2 x plus b. Plug one of these points in. So this could be 5 equals -1/2 times 4 plus b. -1/2 times 4 is a -2 plus b, and it equals 5. So you want to add the 2, and you find out that b is 7. Okay, and then that means the final answer is y equals -1/2 x plus 7. So when I graph this, I start at 7 on my y-axis right here. And then you want to go either down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, like that, or you could go up and left, up 1, left 2 if you wanted to instead. But either way, the line looks like this. Okay, so not vertical or horizontal on this one. Some of the homework might be very similar to this, where there's some that are easier, like this kind, and some that involve the slope formula. Again, this one was a review back from Unit 10. So make sure you know how to still do those, because the final exam eventually in June will have all this stuff on it again. Okay, so this is where we stop. If you have any questions, you can come bring them tomorrow, please, and try that homework out.